The Sword. Speaking of a great sports weekend here on 1290 AM The Source, you know, you got some college hoops, you got some NFL playoffs going on. You're trying to be a sports fan, I think. Pretty good weekend. 880-1290, 880-1290 is your telephone number as we continue to get you ready for the Cats and the Ducks. John gave us a call. How are you doing this morning, John?
Oh, I'm doing all right, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine, man.
Good deal. I was thinking about Gardner and Walton. You know, they had that guy Anderson, and if Gardner and Walton were kind of knocked out of the game, they could rely on Anderson a little bit because he was so consistent. He was a good shooter, and I think his senior year he really blossomed really nicely. And now we got Hill and we got Perry, and I was thinking, well, you know, I don't know if Lavender is ready right now to hop into that same spot as Anderson was, but you know, wouldn't it be nice to have Lavender, you know, take that spot and be somebody that was a go-to guy that you could rely on in case things weren't going too well for, you know, Hill or Perry, or we couldn't get the dribble penetration, we were getting blocked, or you know, whatever. Sure. Okay. Lavender, you know, take that spot and be somebody that was a go-to guy that you could rely on in case things weren't going too well for, you know, Hill or Perry, or we couldn't get the dribble penetration, we were getting blocked, or
yeah. Thanks for the phone call, John. We'll go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. All right. The thing is with I think with Lavender, Brad, is that he can't be relied on to. Ricky Anderson, I would kill for Ricky Anderson on this team right now. But
Anderson would be the go-to guy.
Absolutely, he would be.
And here's what people forget about Anderson: he was at worst 6'9", and Jim Rosborough claimed he was 6'10".
I thought he was tall. I thought he was a 6'10" guy that could do whatever you wanted. If you wanted to be the down and dirty guy to grab your rebounds or play great post defense or, you know, get putbacks, he could be that guy. If you needed to step out and take the mid-range jumper or extend out to the, you know, take a three, he was that guy. A very underrated athlete, I think, from Ricky Anderson.
Well, because he was goofy. And he came in here...
He was just gangly. He was like a puppy that hadn't grown into his paws yet.
And that's exactly what he was. He came in here, and if people don't know the story, Rick Anderson's dad played for Lute at Long Beach City College and maybe later at Long Beach State. And Anderson wanted to be a Wildcat from day one and came on a recruiting trip with Richard Jefferson, Luke Walton, and himself, and they were talking, and Jefferson had committed, I think, already. And Anderson really wanted to take a visit to Missouri because he knew a girl there. And so
shocking that Ricky would do that.
So he asked Walton, and Walton was like, well, I'm going to Princeton first, and I'm probably going to commit to Princeton. Dad really wants me to play with my brother, and well, Walton ends up committing, and so Anderson's left out in the cold. So Anderson, essentially, his dad begs Lute, and Lute ends up having the open scholarship, and basically tells Ricky, you're going to redshirt, you're going to be a whipping boy, you may never play here. It ends up being Walton who gets hurt. Anderson ends up growing. And again, we all know what a goofball he was, whether it was the bleached blonde hair or the shaved hair.
I remember the first time I ever interviewed him, he was sprawled out on the seats at McHale, taking up about 3 rows, it seemed like. And he was talking surfing. He didn't care about talking about basketball at all.
No,
it was great.
And that was part of the thing that I think frustrated Lute, is he never seemed like he cared except when you needed Ricky Anderson to show up. You know, people forget in the year in 2000, he redshirted 2001 so he could get an extra year of key play. But that was the year that Lauren Woods was hurt, Justin Wessel was banged up, Edgerson was redshirting, and they ran into that Wisconsin team who upset in the second round. Anderson had 12 in that game. He could shoot.
About half of Arizona's points.
Yeah. He could shoot, he could rebound, he could do the dirty work, and most importantly, I think for that team, and you talk about the chemistry and what Lute was good at, Jason Gardner was kind of the golden child on that team, and there were some other guys who were a little more fragile. So whenever anyone did anything wrong, he took it out on Anderson. And I finally asked him, like, do you enjoy being the way? He's like, of course not. But Lute knows I can take it, and he's explained the situation to me. So if he has to yell at Jason or Luke or one of the freshmen, he's probably yelling at me, making an example of me to make a point to them. The only only other Anderson thing that jumps out, he's one of my favorite players, was he played on an AAU team with Jason Capono and, who's the guy from Stanford? Casey Jacobson. 8th grade AAU team. Dude, just a bunch of white dudes that could just bomb. Can you imagine these three goofy California kids walk in your gym and you leave? Now, they end up getting, I think Capono and Anderson got in a fight and he got kicked off the team. But shocking. To me, that would be... Who would ever want to punch Jason Capono? To me, that would just be hysterical, seeing these three California surfer kids walk in your gym and you leave with a 30-point loss. Yeah, but it has to be in multiples of 3 because they can't score any other way. Sure, you get your butt kicked by Bill and Ted, basically. Essentially is what it was, yeah. But with Lavender, he's not big enough to... Because if you need to go down low to Anderson and the matchup was right, you could. Brendan Lavender is a spot-up 3-point shooter. That's what he does. You need the dribble penetration actually to get him the ball. Can he be a guy you go to get a key bucket? I think he can, but you have to draw up a play that gets him open on the wing. He can't put the ball on the floor. He can't pull up. I think the closest thing we've ever seen to a pull-up jumper by Brendan Lavender was that 23-foot Salim Stoudemire impersonation the other night. But I think he can be a guy that, if Nick Johnson struggles, if Kyle Fogg struggles, can be a third option on this team. And maybe the third option gets you more points than Hill or Perry, but you need to kind of use Hill or Perry or Fogg and Johnson to eventually get the ball to Lavender. But Lavender, certainly when he's going strong, he gets hot. He's a streak shooter, but when he's going good, he's an excellent outside shooter. Yeah, and I think that's something where, Miller hit on it, and we'll talk about it coming up here on the other side of maybe expanding Brendan Lavender's role a little bit. I want your thoughts, 880-1290, 880-1290, or shoot us an email, studio@1290amthesource.com. Maybe his ability to step up a little bit more, and I think that might be a little bit too much to ask, but I think that a guy like Lavender Shoe has really done a very, very good job of embracing his role and kind of knowing what his role is, and showing really a lot of maturity, in my opinion, of being a senior and never really getting a chance to show what he can do, but kind of knowing where he fits in with this team now and what he can do. And he's a guy that I think maybe should get a bit of an expanded role. Not a lot. I'm not saying that he should go out there and play 30 minutes a game, but maybe you go on a game-by-game sort of basis with Lavender. And sure, the drawbacks are that maybe he's not all that great defensively. He's not going to grab you a ton of rebounds. I mean, he's kind of almost a one-trick pony, really, with that outside shot. But he's shown that if he gets that thing going, he can really fill it up out there. So maybe you run him out there for a couple minutes in the first half, see how that shot's going. If it's falling, maybe you ride him a little bit more than you normally would. Or if that shot's not falling, then you give him the 10 to 12 minutes you normally would. But if he knocks down a couple in a row, the first half or second half, then you play him for an extended period of time. He's a guy who can provide an offensive spark in that regard, and that's something that, let's be fair, Arizona, a team that scores 70 points a game, needs. The Cats need to find a way to get that number higher a little bit and get some consistency on the offensive end, and having an outside shooter gives you the opportunity occasionally to be able to spread the floor, which is something an Arizona team has to do to be successful because it doesn't have a traditional inside game. Another area where I think Lavender could be beneficial, and something that Arizona has toyed with a little bit but hasn't completely developed and strung it along in the offense. We've heard discussions about the Cats wanting to press a little bit more, about trying to get into the open floor to figure out ways to get buckets like that. What you see with teams that do this a lot more consistently than Arizona does is that in the open floor, they're also very good about not just going to the hole, but also finding guys to set up from three-point range find their spots in the secondary transition break. And that's a difficult thing for other teams in a havoc situation to ultimately be able to defend. You're told, obviously, to pick up the ball. So if the ball goes toward the inside, or there's a player who's going toward the inside, naturally you're going to guard the player. But if you're in scramble mode, the most difficult guy to pick up on the floor is the guy who's camping out at three-point range. And if it's an open look, then that's something that can be very effective. And Lavender, obviously, is the type of player who, if he has an open three, there's a pretty good chance he's going to be able to connect it. Arizona has dabbled a little bit with trying to increase defensive pressure from time to time, but I don't think it's developed a secondary break game. And if Lavender is on the floor in a circumstance like that, I think that is something that could be extraordinarily beneficial for Arizona in transition. You know, we were all chatting the other night. We were talking about do you see if Lavender has the hot hand? And I think maybe just as important to seeing what he can do on the offensive end is seeing how he is on the defensive end in these particular games. And if he comes into a game where there's a guy he can guard, maybe he can then play your 20 minutes, but if he's going to be a defensive liability. And I think Lavender's getting a lot better on the defensive end. He seems to have a good idea of how to position himself to overcome some of the lack of foot speed, but I think a lot of that him playing may come down to, is there a favorable defensive matchup? Is there a guy who can go out and guard that will allow him to get the time to be out on the floor offensively and not be giving up more than he is getting for the team?
Is there a lot of guys out there, though, in the Pac-12, or a lot of teams out there, you think, Brad, that just overly will just, with just a number of athletes out there, Washington probably, or is a team that he won't match up all that well against. Cal maybe, but besides that, there's not a whole lot of just completely overwhelming athleticism in this conference. Really.
No, there's not. And I think that bodes well for Lavender becoming an 18 to 20 minute guy, not a 12 to 13. And it'll probably end up being somewhere in between. But yeah, I think more often than not, he'll be able to get on the floor because he's in that 6'4", 6'5" range. He is a longer player. His foot speed is not
bulkier, though, too, than some of the other guys that can run in that same position.
And even with Washington, a lot of times what Washington's doing is they have great athleticism, but they also like to just set their wings up on the outside and then let them shoot from the drive penetration. So if he can be clever enough to pick up a guy and to stick with him because of his size, that could benefit him. Again, I think we will see him end up being about a 15-minute-a-game guy. But you'll have nights like 2 nights ago where he has the hot hand and Arizona will almost be forced to go with him because they do lack consistent score, that one guy or two guys you can go to time after time.
Absolutely. They needed every single point that they got out of him. All the 18 of those points the other night as they went to overtime against Oregon State. But, right now, second in the country in three-point percentage, Brendan Lavender. 60% a game.
And isn't it remarkable?
That is crazy.
With that number that Arizona doesn't score more?
Well, no, with him, just him.
No, I understand that. But if you have a guy who can shoot consistently from three-point range, you ought to be able to spread.
Because he's only playing about 12 minutes
as well. But Arizona's ability to be effective in the half court continues to be this team's bugaboo, and they have to be able to find ways and get other people involved more consistently to make that happen.
Can he be a key to that? Maybe opening up some of the stuff inside because he can extend the defense a little bit?
I think so. Because Arizona's going to have to be able to effectively function with athleticism on the interior. And craftiness on the interior, which is something that Perry and Hill can do, and they can also break you down from the outside. But Arizona may want to consider a little bit, again, instead of starting Hill out at the perimeter, perhaps consider posting him up on the inside and then maybe see if they can run the offense from it's not necessarily incumbent upon Hill to try to score if he gets into a post-up position. But if he can draw some defensive players there, then maybe Arizona's unselfishness, moving the ball around, finding the extra pass, can help a guy like Lavender with an open three, perhaps create separation on the floor and open things up a little bit.
The crazy thing was, after Anthony Gimino wrote about this, and we talked about it a little bit too, Anthony Gimino over TucsonCitizen.com, didn't a lot of us expect that, it wasn't going to be Momo that was going to transfer, it was going to be Brendan Lavender?
Yeah.
You kind of look at it, it's like, that guy's probably not going to be back. Well, he stuck around, and then now he's really embraced this role his senior year, and is playing very, very well out there at that position, giving Arizona something that they lack a little bit. Maybe that kind of, I don't want to say go-to scorer, but definitely a very, very good option off the bench that can get you a number of points.
And I think along the way, he's also becoming a crowd favorite, which is nice in your senior year as well.
Absolutely, and we got a little bit of nickname for him, which we can probably get to